Welcome into the On3 studios here in Nashville, Tennessee. Happy New Year to everybody, and we're off to a great start. Actually, I tried to record this intro on Sunday, but it got obliterated when Dominic McKinley flipped his commitment from Texas A&M to LSU. So here we are, a true New Year's taping edition of the Inside Scoop. What a great day to talk some recruiting. But before we get into it, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. Did you watch any of my videos in the year of 2023? If the answer is yes, then hit subscribe because we're going to be here for all of 2024. So starting off the action, we got the Under Armour game. That's going to happen in Orlando. Then the All-American game in San Antonio is also this week. And with those All-Star games come big announcements. We're expecting big announcements from four-star Zay Mincy, the number 48 overall prospect in the 2024 cycle. He plans to announce at the All-American Bowl on January 6th in San Antonio. Florida State, Miami, all fighting to keep him in state. Alabama, though, is the team trending right now. Who is also making a decision on January 6th? Running back Daniel Hill. He's been so close to committing a few times already, but he is finally ready, and it's going to happen January 6th. Will it be Mississippi State, Alabama, South Carolina, or Tennessee? Remember, he's going to commit on Saturday, and then he's going to enroll at his new school about 4 days later. He's an early enrollee, so it's all coming fast for Daniel Hill and Zay Mincy. Comment section below, where do you guys think these top uncommitted prospects are going? Let me know. All right, let's talk a little 2025 right now. Number one quarterback Bryce Underwood. He plans to make his announcement this Saturday. The number one player, number one QB in the 2025 class. Now, we're going to get to Bryce Underwood, but if we're going to talk 2025, then I got to talk about the number one running back in that class, Harlem Berry, because he comes off the board before Underwood. January 3rd is when Harlem Berry decides, and he is trending heavily right now on the recruiting prediction machine at 98% to the Tigers. And I really don't see any stumbling blocks for LSU to come between them and Berry on January 3rd. I think he ends up an LSU Tiger. All right. Let's talk a little Bryce Underwood now, less than a week out from his decision. Now, Bryce Underwood already has laid out a top 7, but I think it's either LSU or Michigan. Now, you can't count out the Colorado Buffs with Coach Prime at the helm. They are a sleeper, but I think ideally this comes down to two teams, LSU or Michigan. And LSU, that's where my pick's at. A little bit of a concern with them not having an OC in place, but remember, Underwood's a 2025 recruit, so they'll hire an OC and he'll get to know him. So let me know, January 6th, who do you think will land the number one quarterback in the 2025 class? Comment section below. Now, if it is LSU, I think they're on their way to be trending for the number one class in 2025 before the cycle even officially starts. Remember, signing day for 2024 is February 7th. So we're only in January. We got about a month until we can officially turn the page, but already LSU has landed the number one wide receiver in DeCorian Moore. They're leading for the number one running back in Harlem Berry, then Underwood this Saturday. So LSU could have 3 number one recruits at their position before the 2025 cycle even officially begins. So let's take a look at some of the top prospects in the 2025 class. Here's the top 15, and a couple of these guys, like I said, 3 or 4 of them will probably be off the board in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Bryce Underwood, we know, is Saturday. You got DeCorian Moore already committed to LSU. There's Justice Terry, the number 2 defensive lineman in America, already committed to Georgia. Harlem Berry, he's number 11 overall. And like I said, he comes off the board in just about a day or two. Then sitting down there at number 15, you have George McIntyre. Now, I talked to Matt Ray yesterday about George McIntyre and where things stand with Tennessee, and he actually thinks that George could make a decision in late January. So George McIntyre from Nashville has told me that maybe February is when decision could come, but he hasn't set a date. It could actually come sooner than that. Will it be Alabama or Tennessee? Now, George McIntyre also considering LSU, but we have to assume if Bryce Underwood ends up at LSU on January 6th, then that's going to take them out of play for George McIntyre. So it's likely a 2-team battle for the number 2 quarterback in the country. So we're going to talk more about Underwood with Zach Libby from On3's Michigan site. But before we do that, we're going to do that here in a minute. Let's take a step back to the 2024 cycle. Remember, the whole reason I had to come in today to tape a new intro is because of what happened with LSU. They flipped 5-star Dominic McKinley from Texas A&M. So here's a rundown of the top 10. Of course, Georgia's still at number 1. The action starts right there outside the top 5. Miami's still at 6, but LSU, with the addition of McKinley, jumps from 9 to 7. That pushes Auburn down a spot. That pushes Oklahoma down a spot. Still got Notre Dame sitting in there at number 10. And there could still be some more movement to this top 10 because of what caused the movement last night. We got 5 unsigned recruits in the top 100. Now, I didn't say uncommitted. They are, 2 of them are committed. They're just unsigned. So let's take a look at the top uncommitted unsigned. You got Ryan Williams, committed to Alabama. Now, he has set an official visit to Texas, Alabama, and Auburn in the month of January. So even though he's committed to Alabama, if Auburn or Texas could flip him, we could see a change to the top 10. Terry Bussey committed to A&M. He's going to take a visit to LSU. Dominic McKinley. Now, he's committed, but he's not signed. Even though he flipped his commitment, he still hasn't signed with LSU. Now, I don't think anything's going to change here. I thought he would flip his commitment away from A&M, most likely to LSU. But remember, at the time, Texas was involved, Tennessee was involved, as was Oklahoma. But Dominic McKinley makes it official right as the clock strikes midnight on New Year's Eve. He is an LSU Tiger. Now, we also have to look at Gatlin Bear. He's number 43 overall, wide receiver. Michigan leads for him on the recruiting prediction machine, but Oregon, they're heavily involved. And then Zay Mincy, we already talked about him, in there at number 48 overall. He'll make his commitment this Saturday. So where these prospects end up could cause some movement in that top 10. We're going to get all into it this week. We'll cover it. We got a great show today. We're talking Michigan and Bryce Underwood. We're talking transfer portal QBs with Pete Nakos. Then Auburn. They are not done yet. Hugh Freeze hits the offseason looking to make some more noise on the trail and the portal. So, great show. Let's get to it. The transfer QB dominoes are falling fast, so fast that I better get this video recorded before news breaks again. We're going to bring on three's Pete Nakos, who's been knee-deep in all of this action. We're going to make sense of what happened today. A lot of QB dominoes have already fallen, and also figure out what is next for not only Miami, but also Will Howard. What about Malachi Nelson? We're going to break it all down, I promise you. But first, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. We don't only cover high school recruiting, we cover the transfer portal, and we got you covered with all this breaking news. So go ahead, hit subscribe for me now. All right, Pete, let's get to it before even more news comes out. You see the graphic here. Only Will Howard remains undecided, but let's start with Cam Ward. And do you think that his decision to go to the NFL caught Miami and FSU off guard today?
I don't think it caught either of them off guard. I think that the Cam Ward camp has made it really clear since December 4th when he went in the portal that the NFL was always going to be a viable option. I do think it maybe caught Miami a little bit off guard. I think Miami thought it was down to Miami and the NFL. And they knew the NFL was a very viable option, but I think Miami had some confidence that Cam needed another year in college, but obviously he's hurt differently, and now he's off to the NFL.
Wow. Crazy just to go to the NFL because we knew there was high demand for these transfer quarterbacks. And you and I have talked on this show, and it's been batted around in other places too, just how expensive it can be for a transfer quarterback. So does price go up with Cam Ward's decision to go to the NFL, kind of take some supply off there, even though demand is still very high?
I would say in certain situations that, yeah, I think that the value of an elite quarterback is going to go up. I think you and I have talked about it quite a bit, right? I think there's only 5 to 7, maybe 8 elite quarterbacks in the transfer portal this go around. And now one of them is off the board, and the amount of suitors is still pretty high. So, yes, I definitely think that the price of an elite quarterback is going to go up.
And then Arkansas quarterback KJ Jefferson, kind of just moments after the Cam Ward decision, he announces that he will go to UCF. Pete, you nailed that one. You had a pick in for KJ Jefferson to UCF. And then DJU, it was his turn. The next QB domino to fall, he commits to FSU. Take us behind the scenes of that one. How did it play out, DJU to FSU?
Yeah, Florida State kind of set the smoke signal up last night that, yeah, DJ is going to be our front runner now. We're not going to hang out and wait for Cam Ward. And I think what it really came down to is you had someone in DJ who wanted to be a Seminole, who wanted to be in Tallahassee. And I think Mike Norvell and his staff, right? I think that they want someone there who wants to be there. And now Florida State's going to chase another ACC title and try to make the 12-team college football playoff. And they want someone who wants to do that. And DJ definitely wants to be the guy.
All right, let's stay right here in the ACC. So as these QB dominoes fall, we see Miami is still without. What's next for the Miami Hurricanes?
I think Miami's going to kind of take a minute and take a deep breath. It came out a little bit earlier today that all of a sudden they were going to go after KJ Jefferson. And then I think within 30 minutes, KJ had committed to UCF. Look at Malachi Nelson in Miami. They've been in talks already. I could see those heating up. I also think there's a chance that Miami goes after a quarterback who hasn't even entered the transfer portal yet.
Now let's talk about Malachi Nelson for a second. I know he was a 5-star last year, the number 11 ranked overall, but he was 3rd string when the dust settled at USC this season. So is Malachi Nelson transferring to Miami the answer for the 2024 season? I know he'd be a great long-term solution because he still has 3 years of eligibility, but is that who Miami would turn to for the 2024 season, or would they need another quarterback?
I think that remains to be seen. I think they'd love to take Malachi and then someone maybe a little bit older who has a little bit more in-game experience. You mentioned it. He was a 3rd string. I think part of that was due to the fact that he was dealing with an injury he was recovering from for most of the season. I don't think we've seen a fully healthy Malachi Nelson yet. But I think it's fair to say that I don't think Miami's ready to just completely go all in on Malachi, and I could see them definitely taking 2 quarterbacks.
Okay, well then that leads us to the next top available quarterback on the transfer portal board, and that is Will Howard. He's leaving Kansas State. Now, we thought Will Howard was tied to Miami at one point, but it kind of seemed like that cooled. Now there's a lot of buzz around Ohio State. So, Pete, what's up next for Will Howard?
By the buzz in Ohio State. I definitely think that Will Howard and Ohio State have been in conversations. I definitely could see it coming together. I'm not ready to put in a RPM just yet, but I definitely see it ready in that direction. And I think beyond that too, I think Ohio State needs a quarterback, right? Like that was made extremely clear in the Cotton Bowl. Obviously dealing with a 2nd string and a 3rd string true freshman, but bringing somebody in who has a lot of experience, and Will Howard checks off a lot of boxes for what the Buckeyes are looking for.
All right. Now, toward the end of the Cam Ward recruitment, we heard that Auburn was involved, which is interesting to me because the question heading into really the weekend was, will Auburn, after their bowl game, pursue a transfer quarterback? And it looked like the answer was maybe. But did they tip their hand by going after Cam Ward? Can we now expect Auburn to be a major player on the transfer QB market?
They definitely tipped their hand that they want to get a quarterback. I don't know if I'm ready to proclaim they're going to go all in. I think, Cam Ward checked off some boxes. Hugh Freeze and Cam had a pretty-standing relationship from when Cam went in the transfer portal and transferred to Washington State. If you don't remember, Liberty was also involved at the time. Yeah. So I think we'll have to see how it plays out. I think it's way too late to get involved with Will Howard. I don't know if Auburn and Malachi Nelson are a match made. So I think we're going to have to see how some more dominoes fall. Do we get a couple more quarterbacks to enter the portal in the last 48 hours or so?
Probably.
I think we're going to have to, probably. I think we're going to have to keep our ear to the ground on that one.
All right. Well, today was a big day for quarterback dominoes in the transfer portal. We saw 3 quarterbacks make their decision. Could be more on the way. Let me go edit this video and get it posted, Pete, before there's more news that breaks. So thank you for joining us today on the Inside Scoop.
You bet. Happy New Year.
We are under a week before number 1 quarterback Bryce Underwood makes his big decision. And the question is, can Michigan keep the Belleville product home, or is he leaving the state? That's what I want to know in today's video when I bring in Wolverine insider Zach Libby. We're going to talk Underwood. We'll talk the latest on Gatlin Bear, and we'll hit on the transfer portal as well. Before we get started, though, Michigan fans, do me a big favor. Hit subscribe. Look, we're trying to grow this thing. We need you to be a part of it. Michigan fans, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. All right, let's bring on Zach Libby from the Wolverine. Now, number 1 quarterback Bryce Underwood decides Saturday. But first, let's finish out the 2024 cycle and talk a little wide receiver Gatlin Bear. He opted not to sign during the early period. Pretty much down to Oregon and Michigan. Zach, what are your sources saying about Michigan's chances right now?
Yeah, I mean, Michigan's in a good spot. And, it's been that way ever since late November when he returned from Michigan for the Ohio State game, which was his first visit back since his official visit in June. I mean, Michigan has knocked it out of the park in terms of selling what it can sell and
Hmm.
selling a comforting atmosphere and really a family vibe. I think that's been the basis throughout this whole recruitment. Selling family. He comes from a small town. He comes from a large family. He comes from a close family. Now, Michigan is going after him with multiple coaches. I mean, head coach Jim Harbaugh, wide receivers coach Ron Bellamy, area recruiter Jay Harbaugh has been in the mix for a while. They did their in-home last week. I mean, right before the early signing period with him, and tight ends coach Grant Newsom was out there with him. So there's a lot of eggs in the basket, if you will, for landing arguably the fastest man in pads. Now, Michigan has offered him more than just relationships. There's more than that. It's strength and conditioning program under Ben Herbert. This is a kid who wants to major in kinesiology, so that's a path that he wants to take. They're selling him a role in an offense. I mean, this is a kid, right? Like a 10.15 100-meter dash time, second fastest in the country. So they're selling him on being that player, that X factor in an offense that's trying to rebrand itself in a way and having a more balanced attack. So having him on the outside, having him being that weapon that Michigan can have, and having him be a difference maker in the offense. I mean, that's really been a big selling point for him too. Now, there's other things as well. Head coach Cameron Anderson at Burley, Idaho, he has coached Colson Loveland at Michigan, who's the sophomore tight end. Now, there's a connection there. But they're also selling him, we're going to accept you in 2 years, because keep in mind, he is going on his 2-year mission. So this is a kid going to enroll in 2026. So they're saying we will welcome you in 2 years. I mean, Harbaugh has had experience recruiting mission kids. I mean, Taysom Hill when Harbaugh was at Stanford back in the day. That's just an example. Andrew Gentry is on the roster right now. So this is a familiar territory for Michigan and Harbaugh. But yeah, I mean, having Bear delay it into February isn't that much of a surprise. I mean, he's not going on his mission until late February, so he has that time to think it over. But the race against Oregon, I mean, Oregon has a more dynamic offense, if you will. It's closer to home. But again, he has seen what is available in Ann Arbor in terms of being a part of an atmosphere like the Big House for one of the biggest games in the country.
So
he has seen.
What's next for him, though, in terms of visits? Does Michigan have any ability to get him back to campus? Do they even need to get him back to campus, in your opinion, to land him?
No. He has seen everything that is there is available, but I don't believe he has specifically told me he doesn't have to visit again.
Right.
He has everything from the official visit to the weekend in Ann Arbor. So I think everything in those 2 visits gave him exactly what he needs to in order to make a decision.
All right. Well, January will prove important for his recruitment. Now let's talk Bryce Underwood. January is not going to be matter. He's coming off the board on January 6th. And heading down the stretch, there was a lot of talk. Why hasn't he visited Michigan during the season? Well, he finally did. He made a stop there in December. What's the latest intel on where Michigan stands with Bryce Underwood, as we're about 5 days out from his big decision?
Yeah, so I guess the big thing was when we were last on here, and he supposedly took a visit, which didn't happen. But he ended up visiting Alabama that final weekend of the dead period, which was, that was the weekend in which Michigan was going to have him on campus. There was a need for him and his family, in my opinion, to have a sit down with head coach Jim Harbaugh, figure out what the plan is for the future, have him get more individual meetings with Kirk Campbell, the quarterback's coach, to go over fit in the offense, the future of the offense, and really have him sit down with important people in the program just to figure out off the field opportunities. I think that's the big difference maker in how he can monetize individualistic brands, how he can capitalize on NIL through Michigan. There's just things that need to be done on a weekend visit that just couldn't be done on, let's say, going there on a random weekday in the on a school day and just hanging around campus. But having him not there on that final weekend and him instead going to Alabama, it's just I think that was the difference maker in terms of just how confident Michigan could be, in landing the number one player in the country who's less than 30 minutes away from campus. So again, like you said, he's deciding on Saturday. So there's no visits since the Ohio State game. So I haven't put in my prediction yet, but I still, as I've mentioned here on many times, I feel like the On3 recruiting prediction machine is accurate. I have said before that he has always had an interest of his playing for the SEC. Alabama's making a big push right now, but LSU has been just a constant in his recruitment, and I feel like wherever he lands, Michigan just is far behind.
All right, let's say Underwood does go to LSU or Alabama or Colorado on Saturday, and it's not Michigan. What's next for Michigan at the position? What do they do? I know they already have one quarterback committed, but what do they do at the position after Underwood is off the board?
I mean, they still have targets in the 25 class. I mean, there's quarterbacks like Husan Longstreet out of Centennial High in California. Kirk Campbell has obviously not put all eggs in one basket, an approach that was done under previous regimes or previous quarterback coaches at Michigan. There's been a diversity in terms of offering quarterbacks at that position, at that class. But obviously the transfer portal is available. The likelihood of J.J. McCarthy leaving for the NFL is not a guarantee. He could stay, he could leave. So, you kind of have to have that quality next man in line at the position. Right now in the depth chart, I mean, who is going to take over if J.J. McCarthy leaves next season?
Right.
Do you go to the transfer portal? Do you keep recruiting 25 quarterbacks? I mean, they have one in Carter Smith, right? A very high upside player, a very big dual threat player. But we'll see what happens. But, Kirk Campbell is one of the most elite recruiters on Michigan's staff. So if they don't end up getting Bryce Underwood, there will be options in 25 that will be on the board.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned possibly a portal quarterback. But just speaking in generalities here, as Michigan is still battling in the playoffs, when we do hit the offseason for the Wolverines, what will their portal strategy look like? Do you think that fans should expect a heavy, an aggressive push at the portal, or maybe just, spot a few guys here and there?
I mean, spot recruiting. There's not going to be, it's not going to be an aggressive transfer portal recruiting for Michigan. You've never seen that these past few cycles for Michigan. I feel like they'll find their guys that are culture fits, that can be in that environment, that know they can plug and play. You've seen that, this past season from like Ladarius Henderson to Ernest Hausman. But they've already landed, a guy in linebacker, Jayshon Barnum, a guy, a guy who can rack up tackles and you could plug him in. But there are going to be some needs in the transfer portal, positions like cornerback. You've seen guys like Cameron Calhoun, freshman, leave, defensive line, Chris Jenkins, a guy like Cam Good, rotational guys, you want more depth pieces. So guys will be gone last year. You want to replace them, wide receiver is going to be another one. I feel like Michigan has already been targeting guys and offering guys. There's, you could lose guys like Cornelius Johnson and Roman Wilson. So you want that proven playmaker, yeah. But quarterback's another, obviously, depending on whether JJ stays or not. So you're not going to see an aggressive push like some other schools, but obviously it's a resource that Michigan values, and you'll see some guys popping in.
Yeah, they can definitely add some important pieces. All right, Zach Libby, thank you for dropping by the Inside Scoop, talking a little Michigan recruiting today.
Appreciate it, Josh. Thank you.
Auburn's season officially ended with a loss to Maryland in the Music City Bowl. So let's turn our attention to the next logical item on the football calendar, and that's recruiting. So I got Jeffrey Lee from Auburn Live to talk about a potential 5-star flip that could go down in January. We're also going to talk some transfer portal. So Auburn fans, before we get started, hit that subscribe button for me. We are growing this page. It's been fun. Hit subscribe for me, please. All right. Bring on Jeffrey Lee from Auburn Live and Alabama 5-star wide receiver Ryan Williams. He was at Under Armour check-in, and he put out his list of official visits. He will visit Auburn last right before the February signing day. How important is this month to his recruitment to Auburn?
It's absolutely critical, Josh. It's he says he's 100% locked in with the Tide, and no reason to think he's not, except for he wants to take other visits. Now, how much do you read into that? Well, Alabama fans, if the roles were reversed, Auburn fans certainly would be worried about a 5-star commitment taking a visit to Alabama the last weekend before signing day.
Good point.
We've been saying on this show, Josh, that Auburn is a legitimate threat to Alabama here. Hugh Freeze has gone, above and beyond what it takes to get this kid, at least his attention, and wanted that last official visit. And Chad Simmons got from Ryan Williams the date. It's locked in that first weekend of February. So going to be a lot of ups and downs in this recruitment. It's going to be a crazy ride, as we would all expect. But having that last visit for Auburn will be big.
But how did they work to get that last visit? Because Alabama's not new to this recruiting thing. They know how important last visits are, and they have their set for mid-January. So I don't really understand. How is Auburn able to position themselves for that final visit?
I think Hugh Freeze was looking ahead. He was looking ahead at this and was like, let me go ahead and get this locked in before other schools start thinking about this. He was ahead of the curve here. And let's don't forget, Ryan Williams was on Auburn's campus the last day before the dead period in December, visiting with Cam Coleman and Perry Thompson and those guys. Those commitments are the signees. So he was here the last day before the dead period in December, and he will be in Auburn the last day before the dead period in February. So getting those last in-person visits, man, that is very crucial, very important. And Hugh Freeze he's very good at the in-person communication. So getting that will be absolutely big for Auburn in their attempts to flip him.
Yeah. And Ryan Williams has also been heavily recruited by some of the Auburn commitments. You kind of just hit on it, but who are the guys that are kind of spearheading this peer-to-peer recruitment of Ryan Williams to Auburn?
I think it starts with Cam Coleman. It starts with Perry Thompson, those wide receivers. They want the Freeze Five, as it's been known. Bryce Kane, Malcolm Simmons, Cam Coleman, Perry Thompson all have signed. Auburn wants that fifth guy, and Cam Coleman has been very vocal about that on Instagram, on Twitter, on X. So I think it starts with those wide receivers. Walker White has also been in there as well, and let's don't forget Ryan Williams' teammate Antonio Coleman. He just flipped. He's a 2025 kid, but he just flipped from Alabama to Auburn, shortly after the December signing day. So they've got plenty of mouths in his ears going into January.
Is he the last high school prospect that Auburn is recruiting in the 2024 cycle?
At this point, yes, at least that we know of. That's kind of the lone guy right now. There might be some others pop up at some positions, but as of right now, Ryan Williams seems to be the lone target for that February signing day.
Okay. Now, so the bowl game just wrapped. So let's talk a little transfer portal. And before we get into big names, I want to just generally speak on one topic. Do you think that Auburn will look at the quarterbacks available in the transfer portal and possibly pursue one?
Hugh Freeze has publicly said no. He's not. He's comfortable with the guys he has. Now, after the performance we saw from Peyton Thorne on what's today? In the bowl game, man, it would be tough, but I really think he went all in on this high school recruiting. I think he's got Peyton Thorne coming back. He's got Hank Brown. He's got Holden Gerner. He's got Walker White coming in. But I know a lot of Auburn fans woke up the next morning after that bowl game and said, if we're not looking in the transfer portal, we're not doing it right for a quarterback. So, but as of today, I don't think he will. I think a lot of the NIL was geared towards the high school recruiting, and it's going to be geared towards other positions as well in the portal. Transfer quarterbacks are expensive, and I don't know if Hugh Freeze is willing to go that route, at least right now. That could certainly change, but at least right now, Josh, I'm not expecting a transfer quarterback.
Okay. Well, one prospect we know that they are interested in the transfer portal is former UGA cornerback A.J. Harris. He's actually trending to Auburn right now on the recruiting prediction machine. He's a former 5-star with 3 years to play, so good bit of value there. He's already taken that visit to Auburn before the dead period. So what are you hearing on when this could get closed out?
Been tracking this one closely. You know, we were hearing a lot of buzz that he was going to come in for that visit the last week before the dead period and have a decision shortly thereafter. I think there was a lot of people that thought he would already be committed and signed back during the early signing day. Now, we did hear that there was some miscommunication as far as where they project him to play, whether it be safety, nickel, or corner. I think AJ, from my sources, wants to play in the back end of the defensive backfield, whereas Auburn thought he might be a better fit at cornerback or the nickel spot. So I think that's the only reason we've heard why there's been some delayment in his decision. Now we've heard, maybe he wants to take a couple of more visits when the January 3rd transfer portal visit window opens up. So, Syracuse is certainly with Fran Brown, his former defensive backs coach at Georgia, now at Syracuse. Syracuse is certainly a school I'll be tracking to see if he visits. I think Tennessee is another school that we've heard that maybe he wants to visit. But I know Auburn wants to get him locked in. And but AJ is not a media-friendly guy. He's a private guy. He walked in when we saw him during his visit, and he was like, "No media. I don't want anything. I don't even want you to take my picture." So it's information as far as his recruiting is tough to come by, but we have heard bits and pieces there, and I think the position is certainly something to track as well as other visits. I feel like the longer this goes on without him being committed to Auburn, typically in recruiting, the longer it goes on, the less of a chance you're going to get him.
Yeah, that's kind of how it goes in the transfer portal. All right, well, generally speaking, what other needs is Auburn treating as a priority when it comes to the transfer portal?
Tight end. I think tight end is up there. And you've got Rico Walker, the transfer from Maryland, coming in January the 3rd for an official visit. His father played at Auburn back in the 90s. Auburn recruited him out of high school and was in his final group. So Rico Walker, certainly a guy I'm going to be tracking closely in the next few days when he comes in for his official visit. And I think they still want an offensive lineman, two offensive linemen. I think they want an outside guy and an inside guy from the transfer portal. So and they've brought in a couple of guys. They really haven't pushed for those guys, but there's certainly a position that I'm going to be tracking as well. Maybe another wide receiver, but they've got two guys right now, Robert Lewis. So I don't, and Sam Jackson, who was recently signed, don't know if they're going to push hard there, but tight end, offensive lineman, defensive lineman as well, Josh, and a couple of more defensive backs.
Well, it's going to get heated up because right now Auburn's season has come to an end. So transfer portal, high school recruiting, that's all we can focus on moving forward. Jeffrey Lee from Auburn Live, thank you for dropping by the Inside Scoop, talking a little Auburn recruiting.
Absolutely, Josh. Thanks so much for having me. Happy New Year's.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed that content, be sure to subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. We have a new page dedicated only to recruiting. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now.